Thank you to Admiral Marsupial 3 for the story. Let us begin. This is Captain Greach of the Brew transport ship Arasley. We are being pursued by an unidentified hostile vessel requesting assistance. They will be in range within 10 techs, 20 minutes. Please help. 30 words from the captain of a ship none had heard of a race no one cared about in a sector of space no one important had decided was even worth exploring. And it led to the deaths of 10 billion sentient beings. If only I knew then what would happen, I would never have sent that message. The 30 lives of my crew would have been a fair trade to avoid what was to follow. The humans only tried to help. They didn't deserve to be almost exterminated for that. How could we have known what that act of charity would unleash upon them? My scifi, 2.75 central system rotations, 6 months earlier. Your Magnificence, I have grave news. Your son has died. The messenger was filled with fear, looking upon the greatest and most ruthless conqueror the galaxy had ever seen. Certain his own life was now measured in techs. What? How has this happened? Gelstum raged, beheading the messenger with a stroke of his claw. He then took the data receptacle from the messenger's corpse and began to check the report. Gelstar had been taking the rights of conquest, subjugating the Brew to the Empire. The Brew were a young species, new to the galactic stage, far enough away from the Alliance that they wouldn't risk a war with the Empire to save. A nice easy conquest for his son, to begin his education to become the next emperor. How had he failed against such an insignificant foe? He saw the reports of how his pursuit cruiser had identified a Brew vessel and had begun his chase to take the ship, so he could further analyze the species' technology and see what tributes the soon-to-be slave systems could offer them. But even without that intelligence, he still knew there was no way the Brew could have defeated an Empire cruiser. From their long-range analysis, there was no way even their greatest ships could have done this. Never mind a transport. He was right. The transport ship had managed to send out a distress call. It had been answered by the ship of a species he had never seen before. The vessel had caught his son's cruiser from behind and must have scored a lucky shot to his engine. He further analyzed the reports to see who would face his wrath. The name of the ship, EMS Valiant, the species human. Galactic date 2657 Tiowe, August 12, 2213. Selstum looked at the reports from his scanners. He had underestimated the humans. His son had not been killed by a lucky shot, but by a formidable vessel, a match for most Empire raid vessels. However, it couldn't match up a conqueror ship, let alone the 20 he had in his fleet. They could only wish that he intended to conquer them. He read the reports from his scouts and planned the annihilation of their entire race. The humans occupied the closest 2 habitable systems to the dark, a region of the galaxy bereft of sapient species, containing nothing but death worlds and spatial anomalies, making its colonization impossible. It had made the humans unable to expand beyond the current 2 systems they now occupy. His scouting of the systems had revealed the EMS Valiant was the only ship of its class, an achievement for such a small territory of 2 Class 4 worlds, but nothing before the might of the Empire. He read the reports from observing the humans' own information exchange. Despite their impressive ship, they were a peaceful race, mainly concerned with exploration and scientific advancement. They had no real military to speak of, no illustrious history of war or conquest. They would have made a great slave species had they not sealed their own extinction with the death of his son. He opened a line of communication to Admiral Gester. Admiral, ready the scourers. Your Magnificence, Gester babbled out in shock. They cannot stand before our fleet. Why take such drastic actions? They killed my son. There will be no conquer, no subjugation. They will be eradicated from the stars. Yes, Your Magnificence, we will be at the planets within 150 techs, 5 hours. Kelstum turned to his first officer. Put half the fleet in escort of the scourers, ready the rest to exterminate the colonies and stations in the rest of both systems. Then open a broadcast to the humans, so it appears on all their communication devices. Orders given and broadcast channel ready, Your Magnificence. Kelstum readied himself to deliver the humans first. Most important and last communication they would ever receive from anyone of any real importance. The Brew don't count as far he is concerned. This is Emperor Kelstum of the Hesnic Empire. You are listening to your destruction. Your insignificant species has stood against forces it cannot comprehend. Your measly 2 systems cannot stand before the Empire's 300 systems and its 50 vassal civilizations. You think your one worthy ship can stand against the greatest military the galaxy has ever seen. Your pitiful history of exploration and learning without conquest shows us you are undeserving of a place in our galaxy. Did you truly think you could destroy one of our ships and that would be it? Do not bother to beg for mercy, for there will be none. He turned to his first officer. Begin the extermination. 7 hours later. The extermination was a complete success. Both the human planets were uninhabitable nuclear wastelands, all their stations send colonies destroyed, and the few survivor ships had ran into the dark, never to be seen again. As was the fate of all ships who went into the dark. Galactic date 2657 345 18 February 6, 2214. Sir, I have disturbing news. The Empire has deployed both of its planetary scourers. Rune brimmed with rage. Where are they? What systems are they deployed to? And do we have time to evacuate? He didn't like the look on Wera's face. We can't evacuate, sir. They've already fired. How they shouldn't be able to get near any known system outside of their own territory, without the fleet being aware. It wasn't a known system, sir. It was 2 Class 4 systems of an uncontacted species the other side of Brew territory. Apparently they destroyed the ship of the Emperor's son as he was scouting the Brew with a view to subjugation when they answered a Brew transport's distress signal. Rune was disgusted. The Alliance had already turned down his request to support the Brew, having seen the upcoming conquest of their system. They had rejected his request as they cannot afford to risk full-scale war with Empire over a system that hasn't even begun diplomatic discussions with the Alliance. As much as the Alliance were the only ones who could resist the Empire, they had left any species not yet a member to their fate, not willing to accept the inevitable losses a war with the Empire would bring. Rune hated their self-serving cowardice. He hated that 2 Class 4 worlds were now uninhabitable. He hated more the fact that 10 billions lives and another species were now lost to the eons. Were there any survivors? Rune asked, almost helplessly. Less than a dozen ships, sir, but they fled into the dark. So no, then. Before Rune could say any more, he got an alert. A signal was being broadcast across the galaxy. However, its apparent origin couldn't be right. It was coming from within. The dark. This is President Zhang of the United Earth Nations, leader of the human race, and this our declaration of war against the Hesnic Empire. You thought we were an insignificant species on the edge of the dark, an insect to be squashed for daring to protect others in need. You will find that to not only be your worst mistake, but your last mistake. We didn't come from a couple of comfortable Class 4 systems at the edge of the dark. We come from the dark. We were molded by it, shaped by it. We tamed it and bent it to our will. A data file in the broadcast now showed something impossible. What they claimed to be their homeworld was a Class 17 death world. No species could get physically dominant enough on such a world to begin developing the mental capacity to become basically intelligent, let alone sapient. Even soldiers of spacefaring races never landed on anything over Class 10. The broadcast continued. Your vile empire thinks it knows war? You roll over those that don't stand a chance and think that makes you strong. You have no clue what war even is. It is not illustrious. It is not something to be proud of. I will admit it took us millennia to realize this, but you have been around so much longer than us, you have no excuse. You looked upon our history and thought us to be peaceful. You saw what we wanted you to see. When we first knew we weren't alone in this universe, we were ashamed. So we hid our barbaric history, hopeful that we could begin this new era of our species with a clean slate. We knew if the Brew saw what we once were, they would recoil in horror as any civil-said beings would. But we know war, oppression, and conquest more than any of you can ever fathom. More data files arrived. The interstellar wars, the Third Reich, the European colonization, the Great Leap Forward, the Crusades, Genghis Khan, and countless others. Rune froze in fear at the horrors he saw in those files. War is not glorious, it is a disease that we will turn into a plague upon your empire. Rune stood shocked. It took him more than a few moments to recognize the alerts beeping for his attention. When he finally gathered his senses, he couldn't believe what he saw. It was as if a cover had been lifted from the dark, where there was once no activity. He could now see FTL signals, hundreds of thousands of them, from 1,000 systems all over the dark, all heading for the Empire. He should have been happy his worst enemy was about to find out what it was like to fight someone it couldn't dominate or bully, to see countless races and worlds avenged, but he was too terrified to even move.